What's up, everybody? Welcome to Drinks with Shots. Hope you guys have a glass of whiskey or a beer or something to drink. Welcome to Drinks with Shots. Sorry, I'm working on some technical difficulties. I just moved my stuff over to my desktop. Hopefully you guys can hear me. So for today's episode, I kind of want to do this where we just kind of get on, bullshit a little bit, talk, have some drinks. I can answer some of your guys' questions that you guys have. I know that looks like Prospect Brandon sent a message earlier, and he wanted to discuss road captain stuff. So there was a recent event last Sunday. We had our club meeting, our state meeting, and after the meeting was over, we were notified. Actually, my prospect Brandon, he notified me and said, "Hey, this lady that we knew that was involved in the riding club, that she was in a horrible accident. So she ended up getting her leg severed in this accident." And so Brandon wanted me to touch on a little bit of road captain stuff. He said, "Given the recent accident, can you talk about road captain stuff? Maybe the importance of organization on a ride and rider safety being paramount." So you guys remember Strike that was on with me last night? There was an incident last year, probably about this time, that Strike was involved in. And he was in this ginormous group ride, right? And at some point in the ride, he decided that he didn't want to be part of the ride anymore, right? And so he left the ride. Good evening, Cody. And he left the ride. So how he did that was he got in the right shoulder and he zoomed up on the right-hand side, right? And part of that is there was a blocker that went to go block that intersection. He got out of the formation, didn't see that Strike was there, and he hit Strike and ended up in an accident, right? And I remember having this conversation with Strike saying, "Hey, look, this is the deal, right? This is one reason why I don't go on a bunch of group rides with people that I don't know. And this is one of the reasons why I like riding, with my brothers. And most of the time I'm out riding in groups. It's with my brothers or people that I ride with because of safety concerns, right? And the people that I ride with, the most, they know how I ride. I know how they ride. I can anticipate their movements. I know what they're going to do. We're on comms together. We use Cardos, and it's very easy to communicate, right? And so that's a big deal. Organized group rides. We focus a lot on trying to keep our rides safe, having trained road captains. Strike as a Sergeant Arms has done a lot to do trainings for road captains, right? And moving forward, we have our way that the club does our group rides, right? We have our certain protocols. We have our comms that we use. We have our hand signals. I mean, there's general hand signals that, you can pretty much follow for any group ride. That being said, every group has a little bit different standard operating procedure. So if you're going to be on a group ride, I would say for sure know who you're riding with. What group is it? What importance do they put on group rides? I mean, I've been on some charity rides with hundreds of bikes that have just been downright dangerous. And if I wasn't in that group ride with my brothers, I probably wouldn't attend that group ride by myself, right? Just it's not a situation that I want to put myself in. I mean, I've seen people riding by each other doing the most ridiculous things with their buddies, and that's just not a situation that I'm wanting to put myself in. I'm not sure, how much you want me to discuss the road captain deal. Cody, do you have any questions about road captaining since you're a road captain out in Salt Flats? Evening Shadow, how you doing? Cheers. So I've never actually had the the position of a road captain myself in the club. But I have road captain, quite a bit of rides. Hey, what's up, Judas? How you doing? Thanks for coming on the show. But I have road captain quite a bit of rides, and I've showed up to rides, and it's like, hey, we need a road captain. I'm like, all right, I'll do it, right? If I were to give some tips for being a road captain, a couple of the things that I find that are very easy to mess up are this. When you're taking a turn, right? Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And what I mean about that is you don't have to crawl through the turn. But usually when you're riding by yourself and you take that turn, you slow to the appropriate speed entering that turn, but then you're accelerating through that turn. Now, if you accelerate through that turn in a large group and you're continuing to accelerate through that turn and out of the turn, you got to remember, if people are trying to keep that same interval behind you, that by the time that they get into the apex of that turn, they're going a lot faster through that turn than you are. And by the time they get through that turn, they're going way faster than you were, especially if they're 10 bikes back, if they're 15 bikes back, if they're 20 bikes back, right? And so, and we call this, the slinky, right? It's the slinky effect. It's this crazy amount of acceleration that happens that the road captains don't think, because they're used to just riding the way that they ride individually. But when you're on the front of the group, that's one thing that you can really do to help that group is acceleration going through a turn. Acceleration when you're getting on the freeway is just keep it a nice, steady, consistent acceleration. You got to think of it as you're a train engine pulling all these train cars, right? You can't just whiplash all the cars behind you. You got to, get that tension, and then you got to start pulling them all together at a consistent speed. So that's, one of the big advices I give, as far as road captain goes, is watch your acceleration as a road captain. When you get up to your top speed, you can continue to go your top speed, right? That's fine. But it's really the turns that are going to get you in the big groups. Another thing is anticipate what the traffic's doing and give the group, fair warning before you make a movement with the group. Let's say you're doing a lane change, is make sure that you're blinkering, that you're doing your hand signals ahead of time. On the group, we use cardos, we use comms. And so we'll say, hey, block left. And that rear left tailgunner will get in that left lane and he'll say left blocked. And then the road captain or whoever's on, the president or whoever's riding right next to him, depending on which way you're turning, will say signaling left and then say moving. So we make sure that that's blocked as much time as we can before that signal and movement ever happens. Sometimes you can't block from the rear and you got to pick that gap and say moving left. And then you kind of would do that acceleration to fill that gap. So. Cheers, just me and Evan Williams holding court. White label or black label? I like Evan Williams. Actually, if you have Evan Williams with a shot of fire in it, it's one of my favorites. I don't know if you have Porter's Fire out there. It's kind of a Utah thing, but it's way better than Fireball and gives your bourbon a little bit of a cinnamon flavor to it. Can you cover, you said single and staggered formation? Yeah, what are you wanting to know about single and staggered formation? So I'll touch on that. If you have any other, clarifications on that question, that's up to you. But once again, this is group dependent. So in our club, most time we're riding side by side or abreast. So you got, 2 and 2 and 2 and 2 stacked all the way back. And then when we go into turns, most of the time, a lot of times it happens naturally, but the road captain can call it out. Is it going into turns, you would go from your 2 abreast to just slightly staggered, so that when you're going through that turn, that everybody can kind of come in line like this through the turn. And then when they're coming out of the turn, they're almost going to come back out like this. So when you hit that straightaway, they're close enough to that rear that it's a nice, easy movement for them to get back into line coming into twos. And you're not having a lot of slinking. It's just slightly staggered going those turns to give you enough room to make your turn. That being said, that's dependent. And so a row captain can and will call single file. Now, where this happens, like, are you going through turns? How narrow is the road? What is your visibility like? Is it nighttime? Is it dark? I would say all of these things are examples where if I was a row captain, I would highly consider, going into single file, going through a canyon. And once again, that will be the road captain calling it out. So in our group, if we want to go single file, then we'll hold a 1 over our head for single file. If we're going to go staggered, we'll do a sign per staggered. That's the sign that we use. Nice. I'm not sure if that covers what you're looking for as far as single and staggered. Once again, if you're in groups, like we do these community rides here locally in Utah, and we do one in 4 different counties during the week. Unless you're riding by somebody you don't know, I would never ride side by side with somebody you don't know and you're not familiar with how they ride. That's just, me personally. Unless you can trust them, that would be, difficult for me to do. Like if I'm riding with a brother from another chapter and I know how they ride because I'm used to riding with them, then I would ride with them, right? But if they start giving me any kind of signs of, that are sketching me out a little bit, then I would just ride a little slightly staggered just to give them a little bit of a buffer. Cherry set in smoked oak cask. That sounds pretty good, Shadow. I'll have to try that out sometime. A lot of it when you're leading a ride is kind of knowing your audience, knowing who's in your group, right? For example, this horrific accident that happened last week where the lady got her leg severed. I think the majority of the bikes, from what I understand, were sport bikes, and they were zipping up the canyon. And she's a newer rider. I know she's been on a couple of our community rides that we've done, but she's a newer rider, and it's probably way beyond her skill level, right? And so we always stress the importance of, make sure you're riding your skill level, especially when we have people that are riding with us that we don't know very well. We're like, hey, look, at the end of the day, this is why we have tailgunners in the back, because we want them to, take care of those that maybe can't keep up. And that's okay. They can get you to that next destination. But what we don't want is we never want somebody to ride above their skill level, be way beyond their comfort level to try to keep up, because it's not worth it. Your life isn't worth you trying to keep up with me or with anybody. I think that's a pretty, big thing to know. And I'm not sure exactly what happened with this accident, but when it's a new rider riding in a big pack of, sport bikes, I would say that is a little bit concerning right there. Shadow says staggered is good when you have a novice or unknowns in the pack. Yeah, I would agree. And I think that once again, you're kind of going to your lowest common denominator to a degree. So sometimes, like when we lead group rides where we have people we don't know or staggered, people that are unknown or novices in, we will ride side by side, and then they will stagger behind us, and then we'll have a couple tailgunners in the back. But maybe us riding side by side isn't a little bit misleading for them. Maybe that's something that we we shouldn't do. I guess I should think about that more, because maybe that's trying to, maybe they would just try to keep up or do what the pack is doing. Hey, Lance, what's up? Shadow says, ride your own ride. Yeah, 100%. Ride your own ride. And this is going to be the other kicker, right? Is that's easy to do when you're an independent rider, ride your own ride. But when you're an MC, we preach a lot about riding the MC's ride. Sorry, guys, I got this like super annoying fly that's in here. Right, I live right by the lake, so sometimes my kids leave the doors open and they get flies. But sometimes when you're riding with an MC, it's hard to ride your own ride, and sometimes you get flack from your brothers. So at the end of the day, Shadow, I would say 100% ride your own ride, because it's still not worth you getting, you dying or you getting severe bodily injury because you're trying to keep up with the MC, even if you're a member or a prospect, right? That being said, if you're an MC and you're a prospect and you're struggling to keep up with the group, it should be, a little bit of an eye-opener for you on things that you need to improve on in your own time. If you're a prospect, this should be something you should be reaching out to your mentor and saying, hey, I realize that, I struggle a little bit on these rides, and I want to get out and practice more riding, right? I want to get out with these guys and I want to practice more riding. Let's get out and practice some more turns. Prospecting is just as much about practicing riding and learning to ride in the group as it is about, other aspects of prospecting and, joining an MC. All right, Cody, you says the Rogue Souls logo on this is covering it. It says my big thing is being road captain is I'm going too fast for the group. I think this is another thing where, a little bit of, road captaining is practice makes perfect, right? Is you're a pretty new road captain, and it's going to take a little bit of time for you to get comfortable in that position and kind of, get to where your acceleration is going to be correct for the group and all that. And I think, one of the things for comms is good because, you just listen to what your tailgunners are telling you or what other members in the group are telling you to do. And also just be aware of your surroundings. Like I often look in my rearview mirrors, and if I can see some major gaps, then, I'll drop it down 5 and try to get everybody gathered back up. I think the problem is, and we've experienced this, especially when we do some big charity rides, is when you have people that aren't even going like the speed limit on the freeway, and you got a group of like, over, let's say anywhere between over 30 and, under 80. We've had some groups that have been some pretty big sizes, and we've been going like 10 under the speed limit on the freeway. And I think at that point, I think that's creating, as a road captain, I think that's creating a safety problem on the freeway, right? Is you got this ginormous column that is really slowing people down. And not only that, but it's creating a wall on the freeway or the highway for other people. And so I think at that point, as a road captain, you need to have contingency plans with your tailgunners and your blockers and other people that are helping you lead that ride to say, hey, if they can't go at least under like 5 under the speed limit, that's going to be that's going to be the slowest that I'm going to go. If they can't keep up, then you're going to have to form up another group behind me and get the rest of that group there. Because we have this mentality sometimes of trying to keep the group together because we don't want to leave people behind. But what you also need to remember is sometimes there's an issue when you have a group that's too big, that's going too slow because you're trying to ride to the lowest common denominator instead of letting them ride their ride and then letting the tail gunners, assist them and helping them get to their destination, right? I think that's why it's important that the road captains do the safety briefing. It's important why the road captains, get out their map, get out their destinations. This is, where we're going to be next. Because when you do get people that riders that are struggling a little bit more, then the tail gunners can kind of pick them up and get them to where they need to be. They can still enjoy their ride. The tail gunners can get them there safely, and it doesn't ruin the ride for the rest of the people, right? Because sometimes it's already kind of painfully slow when you're in a group, and it can be really painful and not enjoyable for everybody. In the case where you're holding up the whole group for somebody who's, novice, or can't do, what we feel like, should be able to, what riders should be competent and able to do that are attending those rides. Does that help, Cody? Judah says he's my row captain. He's on all the time. He does get in his head about whether he's going too fast or too slow. I tell him he's presed while he's riding. He sets the pace, and that's what we do. Yeah, so Judas brings up a good point, right? Road captain is one of those, interesting positions where really you're acting as president of the motorcycle club, for that chapter when you're on the road. And so to a degree, these are the decisions that, you need to make for your chapter, Cody, is you might make different decisions as a road captain for that chapter than I would make if I was the road captain for my chapter, right? And so I think that is a key thing to remember. I would say the caveat to that, or the exception to that, is, a president can step in, and so can a sergeant at arms. They can step in on the road if there is safety concerns that aren't being addressed by a road captain, right? So one of these stories, and a lot of guys in the motorcycle club have heard me tell some of these stories before, but we were on our second annual run as a motorcycle club, and we were going to Yosemite, and we actually had a great time in Yosemite. The riding was awesome. Okay. And on the way back, we hit some horrific traffic coming out of Yosemite and out of California on our way back to Utah. And it took us way longer to get out of California and into Nevada than we had originally planned. And we still had a lot of riding to do that day. And so some of us were discussing and saying, hey, we're not going to get into the motel till, after midnight, 1 o'clock. And, we got a lot of wilderness that we're riding through, and that's probably not the safest thing. Right. And so we discussed it, and, I was the president at the time, but I wasn't the road captain. I was the president, and I discussed it because I had a safety concern about it. Right. And the road captain, kind of threw a tantrum. He didn't want to go the fastest way back because it was a road that we had ridden on the way there. And he wanted to ride all new roads and do different routes and see different things. And so he got on his bike. He was upset, and he took off, right? I was furious that he just took off and had put the safety of the brothers and the club in his hands because of his own selfish reasons, right? That being said, I probably should have made a different decision. But I also didn't want him just being out by himself on the ride. Looking back on it, I would change that now. As a leader, I would say, no, I am going to stick to this. We're not going to do that route. He can meet up with us wherever he's going to meet up with us, right? But as this played out, we were riding through. I was actually doing some time as a tailgunner on this stretch. And I was watching guys swerving through the road because they were so tired. I was watching people, swerve because they were trying to miss animals that were running across the road. I stopped on the side of the road as a tail gunner for one of our members who, has diabetes because, he needed to re-up on his insulin or fix his insulin. And so my point is the president and the sergeant arms can step in if the road captain is making decisions that he's really not taking the safety of the brothers and the people on the ride in consideration. That's what the leadership team is for. It's supposed to be a checks and balances. Even though the road captain is acting as president on the road, it's like, hey, if the president or sergeant arms says something to you, maybe you should just heed that advice. And at the end of the day, if we need to take it to vote or whatever, you take it to vote. Because at the end of the day, we should all be doing what all the brothers want to do. And we can't just be putting people in harm's way or in unsafe situations just because one man who's leading the group, has a certain, personal agenda that he wants to accomplish. So let's see. That says exactly Judas. Cody says, yes, sir. That answered my question. Yeah, but the road captain's an awesome position. You don't got to deal with as much of the bullshit of dealing with all the member issues all the time, and you could act as a president when you're doing the fun stuff. So, I think that's a pretty rad position. I've never been it, but maybe one day I'll be a road captain and I'll love it and enjoy that and research the hell out of it and try to become the best road captain I can be. But what other questions you guys have? I'll give you another just short story about some time on the road. And anybody who's spent time on the road doing long trips just knows that, sometimes road trips are great and sometimes they go, off without a hitch. And other times, it seems like you're hitting bike problem after bike problem after bike problem, right? And we were on our way to Grand Junction and we were riding the back way, so we can hit the mountain passes, so we went up through Park City and went and dropped down the back way into Grand Junction. And we had a member of our club who just kept hitting bike issues, right? We had stopped a couple times to try to fix the bike issue. We stopped for lunch and we tried to fix the bike issue then as well. We tried test driving it. We thought we had it figured out. We probably went maybe 5 miles after lunch. And then, the bike ended up dragging pipes, right? So the exhaust came undone and we stopped. It was hot outside. We were on this trip for a couple hours more than what this trip originally entailed for this leg of the trip. And I was actually the sergeant at arms at this time, but I was sitting here watching, as things unfolded. And finally I was like, look, this is the deal. You guys go on. I'm going to get this bike on the trailer with our follow-on vehicle. And I will personally, follow, this vehicle. Well, we had a bike on the trailer. So I was like, let's take that bike off. Let's get the driver of that vehicle on his bike. Let's load up the bike that's not working on the trailer. And this individual can drive the follow-on truck. And the follow-on truck and we will just cruise and we will meet you guys there. And you guys just continue on because we've been held up by this bike, too much today. And that's what we did. And so sometimes, you got to make some decisions as a row captain for the group on how you're going to get the group to where you're going, in a timely manner and not have it affect everybody, right? Sometimes it's easy to hold everybody back for a fix or until and a solution is resolved. But once there's a solution, once there's a decision made, in my opinion, it's okay, to pull a couple people back with a straggler or a bike that's struggling. If there is a way, and a plan for everybody to get to where they're, going for that day. Cody says, agreed. I'm loving the road captain position. Lance says, Cody, you kicked ass every time I've had the pleasure of riding behind you. So there you go, Cody. And I would agree. I've been in the formation a few times when you've been road captain. I say you're doing an awesome job, so keep it up. Are there things that you can improve on? Hell yeah. I mean, there's things that all of us can improve on. I mean, I have never been in a position, that I would say that I'm perfect at. There's always room for improvement for everybody. And anybody who tells you otherwise is lying to you or they're ignorant. There's room that I can improve on just being a member of a motorcycle club, just being a brother. You guys have any other questions? Shadow says, agreed. I speak from the tailgunner position. Yeah, the tailgunner position is awesome. I've heard some brothers say that, the tailgunner position is the most coveted position in the motorcycle club, right? I mean, there's not a ton of responsibility with it. You get to chill in the back. You don't have to feel the pressure of being right in the middle of the pack, trying to keep your riding iteration, your distances with everybody. I personally enjoy being tailgunner. Sometimes tailgunner can be a little frustrating because you do got to deal with some of the, slower people in the pack. Sometimes tailgunners need a break and just need to ride with the brothers too and fly. But at the same time, tailgunner is a pretty sweet position. One of the things I love most about being a tailgunner is when the pack is just riding hard and riding tight and riding fast, and you get to just see everybody stacked, boom, 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 and coming through the turns and everything, and it just looks gorgeous and beautiful. And that's one of the things I love about being tailgunner is you get to witness, how awesome the group ride is from the back. And sometimes as a road captain, you don't get to enjoy that view as much. Yeah, Lance says open forum. So we started out by, Prospect Brandon just wanting to touch on group formations and road captaining due to that recent accident that happened. And so we've just been talking about some questions and answering them. So if you have any questions, Lance, go ahead and shoot it out. I hope you brothers are doing something fun tonight because I want to. It's been a long week. I know some guys were going to a haunted house tonight or something. Yeah, while you're at it, go ahead and post. What's your favorite drink? What's your favorite whiskey? I'd like to know. As long as your favorite drink isn't tequila, I think we can be pretty good friends. Lance says, any word of advice for a president of a new chapter? That's a good question. And I wish that there was an easy answer for that question. And part of that is that every person is different. Every chapter is different. Every president is different, right? In the Army, I remember when I was going to officer candidate school and to become an officer in the Army, I would ask that question all the time. It's like, hey, what advice do you have for, a second lieutenant? What advice do you have somebody who's going to take over a platoon as soon as they're done with this class? Because I was scheduled to be a platoon leader in a sapper company as soon as I got out of officer school. My biggest advice for you is, number one, listen to your leaders. Listen to those, who have done what you have done before, and listen to your peers. Listen to the guys that are in your chapter. And just because you're the leader doesn't mean that you need to make all the decisions by yourself. Okay. At the end of the day, you will be the one that makes the ultimate decision, right? But how do you make decisions without seeking counsel, from your peers, and without seeking counsel from people who have maybe had similar experiences? So I would say, Lance, if you're a new president, I would make sure that you decide on people that you trust to, be kind of your counsel or your mentors. And also listen to your brothers in the chapter. At the end of the day, they might not be the president, but there's a lot of value in the things that they have and the experiences that they have in life. And then once you make a decision, own it. Take full accountability of it. Say, hey, this was a decision and I'm standing by it. Come what may. Like, this is what it is. And even if shit doesn't go right, if you got a state president come out and you say, hey, like, why did you do that? Just be like, hey, this is why I did that. Own it, right? Maybe it was a wrong decision, or maybe the state president thinks it's a wrong decision, but own it and learn from it. It's like, you're not going to be a perfect president your first time. I mean, I've been president 3 different times, and I'm still not a perfect president. I still, make my mistakes. So I would say, be humble when you make your mistakes, learn from it, always want to do better. And if you really care about your brothers in that chapter, I think that alone will give you the motivation and the mindset to, make wise decisions. Does that help, Lance? Yeah, Shadow, I think you're talking about Tailgunner here, where he says, also, you get to observe other members' writing skills. Yeah, it's actually really interesting. As a Tailgunner, you do get that privilege of being in the back, being like, oh, yeah, wow. I guess I never realized these characteristics of this member, this prospect's writing, until you're in the back. So I would say, as a row captain, what I do is when we're at rest stops and stuff, I go talk to my Tailgunners and say, hey, what are you seeing in the back? Because they're seeing a completely different perspective than you are. They know who's tired because they can see, them drifting in the lane. They know who's struggling. They know when the wind's, blasting, who's being affected by that wind the most, who maybe is fatigued. They can probably tell you who's the most hungover in the group or who's partied the most just by how they're riding compared to how they normally ride. Or they can tell you, hey, this prospect or this member, struggles with this aspect of riding. And the Tailgunners are a great source for a row captain to understand feedback for the riders of the group. Shadow says, Cody says, I don't think lane flooring is fun. Yeah, it's not. Shadow says, listen to your senior NCOs in military, your longtime riding members in your MC or RC. Yeah, 100%. When I was a, platoon leader, when I was an XO, even when I was acting as commander, when I've been on staff, I've always had, rock star NCOs that have had a lot more time than I've had. And at the end of the day, I valued their opinion. I valued their experiences. And if it wasn't for, their experiences, it would be really hard for me to make, quality decisions for the unit, for everybody. And it says, absolutely. I think he means solid advice. Thanks, brother. Welcome. at the end of the day, I think, the brotherhood is awesome, and anybody who's trying to get another brother down or trying to hold somebody back so that they can succeed, that's not about what the brotherhood's about. And at the end of the day, I'm always about building brotherhood. I'm always about helping somebody out. So if anybody's got any questions, if I got if I can shed some kind of light or a different point, a different perspective that helps you come to, a different understanding of it, or an understanding that, you feel better about, then I think that's a win. So, and at the end of the day, hey, there's been some awesome presidents in this club. Gremlin has been an awesome president of this club when he served, as president for 2 years. Maverick's been a great president of this club. Have they all done things the way that I would have done them, or that I do them, or no? And sometimes I think it's easy for people to question and say, well, that's not what I would do. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, right? You voted them in. You gave them your vote of confidence. You voted in that leader, so support them, right? If you can say, hey, have you thought of this? You can counsel them. You can talk to them. But at the end of the day, it doesn't do anybody any good to question their leadership, to backbite, to talk behind their back. The insubordination is toxic. And so if I can tell you anything, like even as a president, is support the president above you. Support the leadership above you. And if you question, some decisions that are being made, then talk to them about it. It's like, don't be toxic. Don't ever go behind a leader's back and question what they're doing, to the troops or to the guys or to your chapter, because all you are doing is breeding a toxic climate. How do we keep members engaged in the off season? Yeah. So Shadow, and for the other people that are watching this, we're in Utah and there's snow on the ground. It gets pretty icy around this time of year. And, we wish that we were living somewhere where we could just ride all year round, and we try to ride on the times that we can, but you just can't ride in ice and snow and that type of weather all the time. How do we keep member engaged in the off season? Still trying to figure that out, man. But, this is one of the reasons why we decided we want to start doing some of this YouTube streaming, so that we can help build, a bigger sense of community, that we can use this time better for education. And, just because you can't always be on your motorcycle doesn't mean that you can't strengthen your family unit. Doesn't mean that you can't strengthen your brothers. Is to find excuses to hang out with each other, throw a social get together at your house, plan a date night with your brothers and their old ladies. Yeah, when you would have normally had a planned schedule ride, maybe get everybody together and go axe throwing, plan events together. You can learn a lot about your brothers in those settings that maybe you won't learn about those brothers when you're just always out riding with them. And so I would say look for opportunities to get everybody together. I mean, even if you're getting half of everybody together, it's still a success. I mean, even if you just are hanging out with, you invite everybody and you just get one brother to come hang out with you, that's still a win, in my opinion. And so invite, encourage activity among your brothers. Look for opportunities, to serve together, to serve each other, to, have fun together. Maybe use some of the time to plan for what trips you guys want to do next year. Say, hey, we want to do a chapter camp out. Let's get together and let's start planning, what our route is, because you're going to get busier in the riding season. And so you might as well utilize your time wisely to do what you're doing, right? If you look at the Vikings, they go out and they raid all summer long. And when it's wintertime, they come back and it's bulking season, right? They come back, they feast, they do all that stuff, and they get ready for the next season. I would just look at it the same way. You got bulking season, you got cutting season. This is the time to bulk up. This is the time to, prepare. This is the time to do all this stuff on when we don't have the time to do it in the summer, because our summers just get so busy. We're just from when the nice weather kicks in to, just about a couple of weeks ago. I mean, we're going all, all riding season. And so I would say use this time wisely to, start getting down, your chapter SOPs and knocking that stuff out. So skull to you too, Lance. All right, brothers, you guys have anything else? Shadow says, we hold gatherings, dinners, basically hang out, plan for next season, and recruiting. Yeah, so that's pretty similar to what I feel like I said on that. So there you go. Shadow says the same thing, so Shadow must be a smart dude. All right, brothers. Let's see. Lance says that's all I got tonight, but we'll be in touch. Sounds good, brother. I appreciate it. Hey, and if any of my brothers or even you, Shadow, if you want to get a hold of me and talk, I'm always willing to talk. And there's things that we can all learn from each other. And I'm all about the networking and, working together to become better. I'm okay with, if I can have any advice for Shadow, make Shadow better in his club, that's awesome. And I appreciate Shadow, coming in here and commenting. We appreciate it. So thank you very much, Shadow. Everybody, I hope you have a good night, and I hope you continue to drink and enjoy the night with your wives or your girlfriends or your family or your friends. So we'll catch you later, and we will try to maybe do this next Friday and just do a little drinking episode and hang out. So cheers.